Bonjour à toutes et à tous. On est aujourd'hui rassemblés pour l'avant-dernière conférence du cycle des leçons du mardi qui s'appelle École plurielle. Juste pour réintroduire très brièvement, c'est un cycle qu'on avait initié à la base après les événements 2023 avec Camille Sino qui n'est pas avec nous aujourd'hui et Iris Lacoudre et qui s'intéresse un peu enfin, voilà, qu'on a actualisé un peu post-crise et qui s'intéresse un peu à la diversité des pédagogies en école d'architecture. Voilà, en interrogeant des approches un peu exploratoires. Donc, on a eu plein d'interventions très différentes jusqu'à maintenant. Euh, et donc voilà, et on organise aussi ce cycle avec Agathe Henry, qui n'est pas avec nous aujourd'hui, et Louison Boisset, qui vous ont transmis des cartes comme d'habitude, et qui serviront d'ailleurs pour la conférence, enfin la conférence, une sorte d'événement plutôt conclusif qui aura lieu la semaine prochaine. Et donc aujourd'hui, on reçoit Francesca Gotti, je laisse Iris l'introduire.
Alors, Francesca, vous la connaissez, certains d'entre vous la connaissent peut-être déjà, puisque Francesca est venue déjà à 2 reprises à l'école. Une première fois où elle a fait un workshop qui s'appelait Chère Métis sur des pratiques de réparation d'objets du quotidien, et plus récemment sur la construction de catastrophes, dont vous vous rappelez peut-être, c'était au début de l'année, en février, pendant la Winter School de cette année où elle a encadré avec Giovanni un workshop justement autour des catastrophes. Et aujourd'hui, on est très heureux et heureuse d'accueillir Francesca qui est... I'm going to switch to English because it's going to be in English. And I guess you all understand the English very well. Francesca is an architect. She also just graduated her PhD or defended her PhD, focusing on the commons and the practices of autonomy in urban spaces. And now Francesca is doing a research in the University of Pavia, continuing these topics, but also in other formats, continuing her research in different ways, whether it would be kind of autonomous school in like winter or summer school, and very different ways to practice research in different ways. So thank you so much, Francesca, for being with us today, and we're looking forward to listen to you.
I put my Madonna version. The Can you hear me? Okay, nice. First of all, thank you so much for this invitation. When I was asked to join this lecture series, I was really excited. Also to know how this project started in a way that it was really a joint venture between students and professor, and this is so precious for me, like personally, my opinion. And so today I share. It's going to be a bit of a trip backwards and then forward between experiences that I personally took part in, or that I just visited, or that I read about, or that I got to know later on. So I hope it's not going to be too confusing, because we're going to literally like move around, spatially and temporally wise. And if something is not clear or whatever, just like raise your hand, stop. We can rewind or together. And it's funny because the other day I opened Instagram. I don't use Instagram so much, and not TikTok, but there was this funny post by Rivista Studio, that it's a magazine based in Italy about culture and society and politics, and that was saying this thing. So millennials hearing they're about to live through the fourth once-in-a-lifetime recession, like, yeah, and I really felt this message, and also like to students graduating into a once-in-a-lifetime economic crisis, first time. I really felt it because when I first started university in 2008, we were entering this economic crisis, not only in Italy, I mean in Europe in general. And everyone was really scared, and factories were closing down, buildings being abandoned. Like it was a huge disaster for economy, but also for society, for work. It created a lot of instability, also from a political perspective. And for someone who was about to enter the real world after high school, it was like, okay, like, why am I even like doing anything at all if the perspective, the very near future perspective is so unstable, and who knows what I will do afterwards? Like, will I find a job? Will I find anything at all after I finish? And because of the economic instability, of course, there was also a huge problem related to university. So the moment I entered university was also the moment where there were student protests, especially related to some specific legislative decision taking by the Italian government to cut fundings to public university. So I started university and I was immediately like taking into this student protest. So I was reacting quite actively to what was happening. And this for me was like a very skyrocketing start of my study path, but it also kind of guided me then throughout my my student life. And during my studies, I was still engaged in political issues, and this financial crisis related to university continued throughout the years. Please. But at the same time, what I started noticing in all these crises, no money, disaster, political instability, social insecurity, was that simultaneously there were so many initiatives and activities of self-management, self-production of space, mutual support that were just like, they were already there since a while. Some of them were starting, but I started noticing them, and this gave me a lot of hope and strength in a way. The most significant, because it was the closest to me, was Macau. It was a self-initiated project inside of a former butcher factory. So it was a group of students, activists, artists, workers. They occupied the space and they started organizing like all sorts of cultural and social initiatives, reusing this amazing building, and also creating services, social services and welfare services for a city that was not collapsing. I mean, it's still somehow collapsing from a welfare perspective, but they kind of reacted to a lack of something. So, and it has been a very significant element in the city of Milano. And in parallel, also another very important place, but in Napoli, that I visited some years after, ex asilo Filangieri. In a similar way, activists, intellectuals, students occupied this building. They started organizing, like in this very horizontal organization management approach, to manage the space collectively, to understand what the neighborhood was needing, what the city was needing and was lacking, still as a reaction to the crisis. And if we can do a bit of a jump, backward. This Macau was for me, of course, like a sort of a lighthouse. But then I realized that, of course, Milano had much older non-institutional institutions when it comes to social and cultural places and projects. And specifically Leoncavallo, I mean, in Italy we call them centri sociali. which is social centers, but they are really sort of places for cultural production, counter-cultural production, and again, to respond to the lack of services and facilities and to these holes in the official welfare system. And they are all based on this idea to occupy a space which is empty, so that it's actually an urban resource, to share it collectively, to manage it collectively, to organize activities, and to answer to a need. And later we will come back to Leoncavallo sometimes because it's a sort of guide in our lecture today. And at the same time, in the same year, this book was published. Do you know it? Some of you know it? No? I didn't read it in 1976, clearly. I read it some years ago. I discovered it quite late, sadly. So Albert Meister, he was a Swiss sociologist, politologist, philosopher that worked mainly in France, actually. And he wrote this book that, yeah, it would be like the utopia of Sous le Beaubourg. And I read like a small part of the book, if you allow me. And then I tell you why I'm mentioning this book. The inauguration of the Nobel Center was fixed for 15th December 1975, but was then postponed by a year, which suited us since our work was not finished yet either. It was on 15 December 96 that both centers were inaugurated, each in their own way. While the president and other dignitaries of public education and cultural affairs strode around the upper levels and solemnly inaugurated the rooms of the Center of Industrial Creation, the public library, and booths for the sale of artistic reproductions, we were dedicated to the last preparations for our first general meeting. To be honest, 27 floors below the one where the authorities were articulating hot air and elegantly devouring pastries and canapés, our preparations, which were summoned voluntarily, aimed at a sound system and an excessive amount of chalk to allow the participant to mark eventual decisions taken during the constituent and inaugural assembly on the wall. Neither chairs, nor desks, nor tables, nor ashtrays. People themselves would have to decide on the eventual usefulness of any furniture or equipment. With regards to the plan for the day, nothing was decided either. In the interviews that I had given in the previous weeks, obviously the media were curious about what was etched in the depths under the Centre Beaubourg. I had nevertheless indicated the day and the time and clarified that that would be the moment and situation of departure. The meeting was set for 7 p.m., but following the closing time of offices and factory, people had started to flood in and were all surprised at finding neither chairs nor tables. Well, we'll freeze our asses off, and it's rather dirty. Is this culture? We would have been better off going to the inauguration of the center above. And the nibbles? We can't eat chalk. Did you prepare anything for the press, Monsieur Gustave? And where are the toilets? Did you see the faces around here? And there aren't even guards. The walls will be covered with graffiti, so indecent. We'll have to sit on the floor. So it's a fictional book where Albert Meister narrates the birth and the development of this alternative center under the Centre Pompidou. So he writes this actually, he writes this in 1976, but then pretend that he wrote it like 10 years later, and he documents the life of this place as if it really happened and as if it was really under the Centre Beaubourg. And as a counter reaction to the official production of culture and spaces for culture and art. And as you can understand from what I read, the principles were of no initial organization, no preconceived whatsoever management or structural system, but everything was to be decided together by the people that were voluntarily gathering in the place. And for me, when I read this book, I was like, wow, I really feel what he's writing, what he's describing, like this collective hope of really just like, by gathering in a place and having the same idea about society and politics and about the city, we can really create and decide and produce a space together without any preconception or pre-established structure. And this can be an actual built space in the city. And then, like, I found this, this idea of, this is a quite explicative picture of what he was imagining happening under the Centre Pompidou. And what he was describing was really what was happening anyway, also in Italy. So apart from Leoncavallo, we had other places in Milan still, like Macondo, that was more than politicized, was more artistically and culturally based and structured. But all of these experiences were following students' waves, protests around the city. These are some posters from the same years where students were calling upon assemblies to meet and produce culture and produce spaces and reclaim spaces in the city for them to meet, to have spaces freed from capitalistic structure and principles, and to really create a different society and a different city based on these principles. And it's something that then, of course, was happening all over Italy. This is the little picture that I asked to share with you, and that is printed on the postcard. And it's Pantera, that was a collective based in Rome that was occupying the university some decades later. And that was also responsible then for so many initiatives in the city of Rome, again, reclaiming spaces that were abandoned, again, creating spaces for the city, really building collectively and managing collectively these spaces. And only 1 year before, again, we come back to Leoncavallo, the occupants were being evicted by the original building. Because clearly political parties were not happy with someone occupying an empty building and creating counterculture. They were evicted, the building was demolished, but they moved somewhere else. So they didn't give up on the idea. And for me, this is quite significant because no matter actually the place where you do a project, what is really important is that afterwards there is a structure and a network of people that are conscious about what they are doing, that they share certain values and ideas, and that they can continue to create a different idea of a city and to really build it elsewhere, even if they are evicted, even if the building is demolished, even if the project ends, because this is the story and the cycles of this kind of project, but you can still create a legacy of your ideas and your values and continue to evolve and carry on. These are other examples, but we can also go back later. And in this idea also of moving around the city and continue in creating places for us, as a society, as an alternative society. When I started university, again, the first book I read at university was this book by Carreri that is part of this Pantera collective and that did so many initiatives. And he's one of the leader of this architectural collective that is called Stalker. That for me was very significant as an architect, as a student, as a practitioner, to really understand how to make a different kind of architecture that is based on experiencing the city, on building alternative forms of spatial occupation, spatial management, that is light, that is not invasive, that is based on reused, that is based on finding places in your city which offer a different idea of politics and society, and that are based really on first-hand experiences. So he also teaches in university. He met his fellows in university, so just like some of you here today. And together, as a group of students, they founded this collective Stalker, and they started doing project together. Like this one, that is again for me a very significant examples. In '99, they occupied an abandoned building inside again of this huge butcher factory in Rome to host Kurdish people that just fled their country and that arrived in Rome. And simply by cleaning the space, reorganizing the space inside, building outdoor gardens, they created a new social and cultural space that was also hosting some of the families of this Kurdish community that fled to Italy. So again, in this idea that like we all have, in a way, the power and the possibility to really shape and create spaces if, of course, if we join forces. And to go to the first project that for me is significant, when I finished university, actually, so of course the crisis was still continuing, there were still problems with whatsoever, especially in Italy, we stopped, or like the building sector was really kind of collapsing. I never really wanted to be in an architectural office personally. I was always more into this possibility of actually producing your own city and your own spaces. And when I graduated, together with a group of friends, with an association that was already active in my hometown, in Bergamo, we found that in the city center, in the historical city center, there was this abandoned prison that was to be a monastery. And we asked the municipality if we could use it temporarily. So in this case, we said, okay, let's do a step forward. So not to occupy the building, but to dialogue with the municipality. And we were allowed to enter, and we were allowed to use it temporarily. And for 8 years, we managed the space. This was the initial group. So we were really like few people, and we entered the space, we cleaned, we bring electricity, we started furnishing it. And then we collectively managed it with the community of the neighborhood, with other associations, with students, with the city itself. And we were organizing festivals, conferences, workshop. It was used as a space for children. So we really tested also in very different ways, also failing, also using tools that were not so good at first, and then developing them to really understand how is it possible to manage a space with the widest possible group, while allowing like really true accessibility to a place that also has a very complex history and a very complex architecture, while keeping it safe but still open. And this was towards the end of the experience. This was clearly during COVID times, but we had to rethink a lot and to reflect a lot on what it means to do a project of reuse of a building with an horizontal management non-structure, and with the self-found financial support and self-organized event. And funny enough, in the same year, there were other 2 former prisons in Napoli that were turned into similar projects. And the pattern is always the same. You have a group of activists, of friends, of students, former students, and you try to test possible uses. You open just one room, then you open the whole building, then you close it again. And throughout the years, you really try to understand what it takes also in terms of economical, social, material energies and resources to really run a place, a bit like, again, if we think about Albert Meister and what he was writing in this book. And you only learn by doing, like there is not a manual about how to do something like this, but it's really based on the practice of doing things together, failing, testing again, and see what happens. And then jumping a bit closer to these years. Of course, these experiences were much more on a social level, on a functional level, and there was less design in the sense as we intend as architects. And I felt also that there was something lacking in a way. So is it enough that you just use a building very randomly, even if you have like a lot of intention and values? And for me, the answer is no, because you still need to make the space comfortable for people to feel welcome, to feel at ease, to feel that they can really be safe and at home. And I had a very nice occasion to work in Mendrisio, in the University of Mendrisio, with Leopold Banchini. He's a Swiss architect, and he works a lot with self-construction and like locally based materials and reuse and really one-to-one scale kind of architecture, where architecture is produced through experience and through building and through slow process. And we worked together 2 years in the Academy of Mendrisio. And our work was strongly based on the principle of spatial occupation, sited resources, and self-building. And we did this experiment in 2022 where we lived together. So it was a normal design studio like the one you would have here. And we started by living together for 3 days in a greenhouse nearby the university. So the challenge was a bit to reflect on how can we live together as a small community or a small society, like a tentative test, occupying a space. Again, this was not illegally occupied, so we talked with the managers of the greenhouse. They were very happy to host us. So the challenge was like, what do we need as a small society to be able to live together temporarily, obviously, in a place like this? It was interesting because already, I mean, a greenhouse is a building. It has a very specific climatic situation of heating, like natural heating in a way. You have water. So it was, let's say, a facilitated situation scenario. But yet we had to decide together what to do, what to build in a very short amount of time. So we started a week before deciding what to do. So students were organizing very organically. They divided into groups and they were proposing functions, very basic function. So, and for them, like one of the most important, and we agreed, of course, on this, one of the most important function or activity for our society was a dancing room. So one of the group found this very cheap material, and they built an inflatable dancing room inside of the greenhouse. That then, of course, during the 3 days turned out also to be a music room, a relaxing space, like many things. But the simplicity also of the space that they created and the atmosphere that was inside of this room was really made it work in a very immediate way. And related to this, there was this sort of playground, let's say. And all the materials that they were using, they were either used materials or rented materials that then were later on taken back to the factory, to the producers. But still with this idea of building a little temporary city, a bit in like the drop city designed by Italian architects, Archizoom. So this idea that we could possibly arrive in the space, live temporarily, and then leave without leaving any trace. So it was even more challenging because at the end of these 3 days, we had to anyway leave the space as it was before. So with, let's say, a 0 footprint and 0 emissions, possibly. And And if the playground and the dancing music room were maybe easier in terms of infrastructure, then we also had to understand how to eat and prepare food for 30 people. So there was a group dedicated to build the kitchen of our temporary community. And I mean, all of this was a way to also rethink what it means to eat, sleep, and take a shower collectively. Because we're so used to design and also experience things individually on a daily basis. So, I mean, we are so used to, okay, I prepare the lunch for myself and then I eat alone, maybe in front of my phone, or I go to sleep alone. And I think maybe with COVID, maybe you more than me, like you experienced a lot of individual sphere because we were all locked in our houses, because we had so few occasions of exchange. And it was not just during COVID. I think after the pandemic, we still, or at least for me and the people I know, we still feel that this left such a trace in terms of social interactions, and that we kind of have to relearn what it means to share spaces and experiences and rituals also on a daily basis. So this was really like a way and an opportunity to redesign through building in a very improvised way as well. And improvisation, it's an essential key in this kind of projects, because they have to do a lot with the temporariness. They have to do a lot with unpredictability, with unplanned. You don't always have, you're not giving a brief when you do this kind of self-managed project. Like you have a need, okay, we have to be together, we have to live together, we have a space, let's do something. And the fact that you have to improvise with resources and with actions shortens the time of design and planning, and kind of throws you in the process of production and construction and design in the making, which helps in a way because it avoids all this overthinking that sometimes as architects we do. Yeah, I have to think about the concept, the philosophy behind it, and it really throws you in the philosophy of the making, of the action, of taking action. And again, related to these critical times we live in, sometimes crises, also environmental crises, political crises, social crises. I mean, all these crises, what I think they tend to do is that they really freeze us, because we feel so scared and so sometimes useless. I mean, if the world is going down the drain, like, why should we be doing anything at all? No, like if there is no future, no perspective. But then it's really about the now. It's really about like making things now, acting, taking action together, and building not an alternative future, but an alternative present. So yeah, how to grill sausages for 30 people, and how to store food for 30 people. Also just grabbing things, you know, very randomly around the greenhouse. And how to live together in 30 people. So a group found these construction wooden pieces, and they made this like floating platform in the middle of the greenhouse, and built a fence. And this was really also such an amazing experience, like to suddenly be very careful when someone is already sleeping and you have to sneak in this giant mattress. And Leopold trying to give a lecture at 10 in the evening and everyone like falling asleep, sort of bedtime stories about architecture. Also trusting a lot other people in your community, because suddenly like you are for this short amount, it's 3 days, everything is available to everyone. So also your private things in a way. And again, I think we are so not used to feeling comfortable in public spaces or in sharing spaces, because we are afraid that someone might steal something, or, you know, also to learn to expose ourselves and to trust other people again. And when we are building places together or we are managing spaces together, trust, it's together with improvisation, another very key moment. And they built a beautiful sauna because we thought that just having shower was not fancy enough. So we also had like these rituals of having the sauna together and or individually, separately. And again, connected to the sauna, there was this relaxation room. And maybe the funniest part was that they built an actual functioning compost toilet that was at the end of these are pepper plants. So you would have to walk in this very spicy corridor, almost like rushing to the end of the corridor to actually take a pee in this beautiful compost toilet. And it worked for 3 days at least. It worked beautifully. And this experiment, of course, then when we finished, it was like it's already over. Like you felt you could continue for a longer time, and it was a way for us as a group to really create a strong bond. But also, like, students really learned how to use construction tools. You know, I mean, they had to build these things in 3 days and then dismantle them. And it's something that then was really embedded in their design process in the rest of the semester, because then we, of course, this was just a start, but then the idea of the design studio was to come up with very basic, not very basic, but manageable construction techniques out of found material. And then the project, so the architectural project, was the very last phase. So we started from this very physical experience. We developed construction details, and then the project was kind of born out of this process. And it was really interesting for me as well. And this guides me to another project where I was the initiator together with a friend of mine. And that, funnily enough, comes at the end of this project of the prison that I was telling you before. So this prison that we started managing in 2015 was going to be closed in 2024 because the municipality of Bergamo won a competition to turn it into a residential building. So we knew that this experience was about to finish, which was very emotional as well. And we felt that the moment that the building would close, everything would be forgotten. We had this fear. So we thought, like, okay, how can we bring out as much as possible and also to, again, share one more time what happened in this building? So we organized a winter school. I mean, it's a bit like what happens here in February, you know? You have this very intense 1 week. There is a huge community, and every time I come here, it's like, wow, like the things that are happening around are just, they're just so amazing, and I'm always so surprised to see what each group can do in such a short time. Because again, it's like, you know, the pressure of doing something, like just an idea. You have short time, you have energy, you have like this, whatever you find around, and you just go with the flow. So we organized the winter school. We organized an open call for students and young practitioners. And we very quickly formed this group. So at the end, we were 50 people. Around 40 students, young practitioners, and then it was the mentors, let's say, that were all young practitioners from European collectives, so architects, designers, graphic designers. And we met the first day in one of the rooms of the former prison to decide what to do. So the goal was, again, it's we have 1 week, we have to inhabit this place together, and we also have to produce something that can be later passed on to someone else. So the idea was to kind of condensate this 8 years experience of this project into physical objects and then carry these objects out and pass them on to other associations or other places that could use this object also as a legacy of what has happened. But without no clear brief. I mean, so we knew that we would be divided into groups and that we had to share everything. So share meals, prepare meals together, share the space, share ideas, share the toilets. And we also had some lectures during the week in this idea of, in this perspective of sharing ideas. And the groups, they were groups more or less, 10 participants with 2 mentors. We only used repurposed materials that we found in the prison because, of course, in 8 years, you accumulate a lot of things that then you eventually don't use. And one of the group that worked on this collective room, that was the living room, this really embodied the idea of softwaring spaces. That was the name of the winter school. They created a giant carpet that was then transformed in a canopy, that was then transformed into many other things that also traveled outside of the building. And it was for us like maybe this was the key intervention because it was also the space where we would gather as a community at large, having dinners and having meetings. And we also had a group that was documenting the whole process. And they would take pictures, take notes, stitch things together. And they, at the end, created a fanzine that was documenting the process, but also the ideas, but also testimonies of what happened during the week, speaking with local inhabitants of the neighborhoods, speaking with people from the association. And we all, they all chose a different tool, different tools, different materials. But always in this idea of building together, improvising, producing with what you have. And it was very challenging again because you have to take collective decision in a very short time about what you want to do and how you want to do it and how you want to build it. And this was the group that was working on the construction of tables that could be used for gatherings, but also lunches, but also workshop. This was the group, and this was, they were working with Camposats, that is an Italian, young Italian collective. And then Masha Feze and Licia Soldavini from Berlin, they were working on creating a community kitchen, reusing objects. This is one of the corridors of the former prison stuffed with this material that I was telling you was accumulated. So, students and mentors would just like go and pick up things that could inspire something in the design process. So living, working, and sharing were all mixed, in the same spaces and in the same with the same group. So there was no really a boundary between the moment we were eating, the moment we would be building something, or the moment we would be sharing ideas. But everything was really falling together in the same place and in the same time. And this is a view of, as I was telling you, like the carpet becoming a canopy. And I didn't put pictures about this thing traveling around, but this was the first object that traveled around the city. So they kind of put it on themselves and they started walking around the town. Because of course, this building was really hidden in the heart of the town, and many people didn't even know it existed. So one of their idea was really also to bring this message around in a rather performative way, but also to attract people. And we had again many visitors during the week. And this was the community kitchen that the group built it was a sort of a wandering device made of little pieces. And here we set it in the former church, because the prison was previously a monastery. So we had also really fascinating spaces inside of this building. And here we also organized the last performative dinner all together. With a fireplace, with the little angels in the background. And the community kitchen was then taken by a group that redistributes used objects or second-hand objects, whereas this, the so-called dancing table, so it was a huge table, but then it could be divided into pieces, was then adopted by a prison in Milano, an actual active prison in Milano, to do workshop with inmates, young inmates. And we also, of course, again, had our music dancing room. So we were painting the walls, so we were doing the sound system, setting everything. And this was also for the very last closing day of the project. And a little fanzine that actually I forgot to bring. I wanted to bring. Maybe I will share it with all the documentation of the process. In all this excitement, what happened during the last 2 years, actually, more or less, or in the last years, is that many of these initiatives that I shared with you, that were funded or created in the 90s or in 2012, closed in Milano. Not only in Milano, actually, also in Bologna, also in other places. And when I started noticing that, like, okay, we are losing so many of these very precious places that were opened and that lasted for ages, you know? I mean, Macau maybe was, I mean, Mercato Sonato, for instance, only lasted 4 years. Macau, I told you, opened in 2012. Torre Maura opened in 1995, maybe. Leoncavallo is the very first one that I told you, is to be evicted in May. And I was like, wow. So are we really losing all these places? Which means that we are not only losing like open places as physical spaces, but are we also losing something more? Like, are we losing the energy? Are we losing the network? So it is a phenomenon that is happening in Italy, at least. And it's happening because of a political situation, because of course, I mean, the right party at the government doesn't for sure support this kind of project. We are losing them because people that started this project are tired. You know, after like 40, 30, 20 years, even 10 years, even 8 years of managing a place like this, you are really, like, you're lacking energies, like you have to do everything by yourself, like find money, resources. And somehow what happened in the last years in terms of crisis, but also pandemic, but also all these things didn't help somehow, maybe so much in renewing also the human resources behind this project. Or at least this is what it seems. At the same time, I feel, at least from my experience, the experiences I just shared with you about the Mendrisio project or the project in Bergamo, tell me something different. They tell me that there is still a need for this kind of places and this kind of projects, and there is still a need and the will to do things together in a different way and to build a different idea of society. And the fact that Leoncavallo, Macau, the Roma projects, like all these projects, they created a legacy. I mean, myself, like I acquired this experience or this interest because I met certain people, I visited certain places. So in a way, I learned not only in university, but also outside university and in between, you know, in this continuous exchange. And that it's so important that we continue exchanging in this sense. So legacy is important, improvisation is important, exchange is important. And that nevertheless, even in very critical moments, so going back to this sad, funny image on Instagram, hey, millennials facing the fourth crisis, if we acquire knowledge and if we continue exchanging this knowledge and also sharing as we do today in university, outside university, we continue this legacy of alternative cultural production, of social welfare, and of alternative way of producing cities, studying, but also practicing, but also being actively engaged in what happens around us, first of all, so in our cities, in our neighborhoods, in our network. And to give like a last seed towards future and hope. We are organizing a second edition of this intensive school. And this time, so still in Bergamo, this time it's going to be a summer school in September. It's not going to be in a building, but it's going to be scattered around the city. So we are planning to work with local associations that are working with urban agriculture and managing collectively gardens and fruit gardens in the city. And to again think like what as designers, as architects, can we produce collectively that support local initiatives, local activities, and that help certain informal situation to continue. Also in a sense of shared management and just to wrap it up, I mean, also like I possibly will share this board with you. Also, if you like to contribute. And I mean, now I also want to leave you the stage because I really want to hear about your experience in this sense. If you are familiar with any of these initiatives in Paris or in France or elsewhere, what is your personal idea of producing cities? If you agree with what I've said, or you are on a completely different page. But yeah, there are some many researches and theories and practitioners that work on this topic around Europe. In Italy, we are quite lucky in a way because we have quite of a strong tradition of practitioners and theorists working on urban commons. That is a term that has a very long history, especially in the UK, but not only in the UK, which formalized this idea of neither a private nor a public city, but a common city. And the fact that the city is full and it should be intended as a shared urban common where we all have as citizens, active citizens, the right, but also the duty to take care of it and to formulate and organize our own spaces. As students, citizens, architects, activists, parents, and whatever. That's it. Thank you for your patience. Yeah, no, I'm just curious, like if you want to share any related experience that I don't know in France, or if you have questions, of course, like.
Thank you so much, Francesca, for this. It's the first time I see a presentation on Miro, like really happening, like navigating, which
Was
is
it
really nice.
understandable?
I mean,
Okay.
yeah, for sure. I think so. Maybe there are some questions from students directly, or shall I? Ah, Louise.
So yes, thanks a lot for your presentation. First, I have maybe a commentary because you showed us a photo of the architecture faculty of Valle Giulia in Rome. Last year, I did an Erasmus semester at La Sapienza, so I studied in this building. And indeed, I saw that it is still a place of protest used by the students, because there were very often banners, drawings on the ground or on the walls. So the students were using their school as a medium for protest. So it was quite a powerful gesture. And we don't saw this kind of gesture here, maybe because the school may be more neutral places. So if I have a question, it's maybe, do you think a university can become a place for protest, or it should remain as neutral as possible?
What do you think?
Then
I
answer. Think it depends on the protest, on what we are protesting for, because political debates, it's quite a complicated gesture to have. Yes, so I don't know how to explain, but we don't agree on the same things. So I don't think I can write what I want, what I think on the walls, because not everyone think like me. So
very interesting answer. So, and very interesting question. I mean, what you say, like, I cannot write something on the wall because someone might not agree with me. But if you write something on the wall, first of all, it also depends how you write or what you write. But if you write something, you are enabling a dialogue, to open a dialogue, you know. So of course, like, writing and the word is like the most direct and understandable by everyone. So it's a very useful tool. And if it's formulated in the right way, it really opens up dialogues rather than imposing an idea. So I think that, like, university is a political ground. First of all, because it's theoretically open, also in terms of a space, because we can be all together safe, in a safe environment. And because it's a space of to produce culture and society and politics. So probably words become aggressive or violent or imposive, especially when they fall into partitical. So the politics of parties, you know, left, right, center, extreme right, extreme left. But politics also has a different connotation, which is like neutral politics, which maybe it's weird, but, you know, like social politics. So the politics of everyday, the politics that it's about welfare, that it's about mutualism, that should go beyond parties. So, you know, we might have a very different position in terms of where we stand, but certain things should be equally understood and shared when it comes to rights to the city, when it comes to social rights, accessibility to services, you know, all these things. So I think it's important that we take space, especially in universities, to share. We have to be careful how we formulate what we say. So if we pose question, it's always going to be like a good way, you know, if you stick on the wall a question that you have, or a statement, but that it's an open statement, you allow for a dialogue to start, I think. Yeah, we should be careful, of course, and respectful, but I think it's go and write. Maybe not like directly with the with the marker on the wall. We can stick papers, but it's important to appropriate the space because this is yours. I mean, universities are for you, are for everyone, but are for you, and like you are the, I think, the protagonist of this space. Yeah, could it be?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
So first, thank you for the presentation, and I really like the Miro presentation because it enabled us to also understand the links and the chronology. It was unexpected, but quite funny and cool. And also, I think your question was interesting because I feel like in France and maybe around the world, like at these times, universities are often afraid of taking position or are asked to fight against their students taking position in political subjects. And even here, like I heard like last year, there were some people wanted to talk about what's happening in Gaza and it was forbidden by the administration. I don't know, I wasn't there, but it's interesting that we are not that much speaking about politics in this school at the moment. Comment dire ça? Alors que, whereas we are doing studies that are fully politic. Yeah, sorry for my English.
No.
But before that, I wanted to ask a question that I'm asking myself a lot about this kind of places. In French, we say we have a word for this, which is tiers-lieu. I don't know if it's the right, if we are talking about tiers-lieu here, or but it's like third places. But
Also.
anyway,
Also, they can overlap.
Okay. And there were a lot of very big places like that, which was Les Grands Voisins in Paris. I don't know if it was exactly the same project, but and after that, I discovered last year that the collective that created the Grands Voisins start to produce many places like that in around Paris or other big cities. So it's Plateau Urbain, and I really love their job. But then also I'm wondering, like, it started to, how to say that? I feel like these places are now um, uh, taking part of the capitalistic system of producing city, and it's just a new step. So it's great because it enable people to have places for artists, for association, for refugees or whatever, with very affordable prices, and it's only and it's always temporary. And then I feel like it keep these uses in I don't know how to say that, as if they were not rightful to be part of the city. It's still always just temporary. Okay, we accept you to be there for like 1 or 2 years because we don't know what to do with this building, but then you will have to move away and you will never have a rightful place to stay in the city. And it made me a bit uncomfortable. So I was wondering what was your thoughts about that?
Thank you for your question. No, you are pointing out quite of an essential aspect of this project. Because somehow, like very often these projects are instrumentalized to gentrify, cities. And for instance, the Macau one is quite of a relevant example. So this one that I was telling you before, this building, so they evicted them in 2021, and now they are starting a project of regeneration of the entire site. And Snoetta is doing the master plan, and I don't know how many architects are building like a sustainable residential compound, cultural. It's a risk of this project because, of course, this project creates a lot of they attract a lot of attention. They make neighborhoods much more interesting and appealing, also for tourism. And what you describe is like it's at least European phenomena in Lisbon, in Berlin, in Milano, in Paris. They attract tourism, they attract capital, they attract interest, they are instrumentalized, all of this. In the worst cases, it's instrumentalized by the initiators themselves. So sometimes you find collective, not the one that I mentioned, but in other cases, you find collectives and groups that are regenerating places for community, but they are actually appropriating these words and these methodologies and these processes to do actually very trendy places. In Florence, I was speaking with some friends in Florence, and they were telling me about this project that I haven't visited, but it was exactly this. So there was an abandoned building, and then a group asked the municipality to reuse it to make a place for culture for the community, but they were doing huge profits out of it. And then it was the start of a big gentrification. So it's a risk. In some cases, initiatives are lucky enough to have the use of the space for a longer period of time. Leoncavallo, you saw like they were evicted and they move again, and now they're going to move to another place. So this depends widely on the local urban politics and policies. So in some countries, you are luckier and local policies help you to use these places. In other countries, you are not so lucky. It's rare that you are allowed to have these places for a very long period of time because there are major interests, obviously. If you use or if you reuse like a little building somewhere in the countryside, maybe nobody is going to come and bother you. If you use a huge building in the city center, for sure. But we still have to do it. I mean, no, it's a bit of a responsibility. Even like no matter what will happen afterwards, no matter if we know that someone will take advantage of it, because in the meantime, we are actually building something very important. The important thing is to realize when it's taking the wrong turn. So if you realize that your project as a social initiative, as an informal grassroots initiative is being instrumentalized, or you are taking a capitalistic turn, then you have to be strong or brave or honest enough to step back and see what happens and what happens afterwards, and to take position. So again, like what she was saying before, like universities might be, or what you were both saying, they cannot take a position, they cannot, stand and say we are against or we are with. But it's important that we do it. I mean, at least us, like we are free to say whatever we want and to take position, and it's very important because we are not institutions as students, as citizens, so we have to And for instance, with Macau, again, as an example, this year for the Design Week in Milano, there was another design studio that was reusing this place to make a fancy restaurant before this place turns. And the group of Macau was very, let's say, strongly taking position and say, we don't stand with this idea of a capitalistic city, blah, blah, blah. And they might all be apparently like small things, but each time we take a position, it says something against the gentrification, touristification. So yeah, it's in the nature of, it's actually in the nature of cities, no, that they are places for capitalism, but all these initiatives are still important, even if they are short. This is what I think, of course. Thank you for your question. There was also, no.
Yeah, on a very kind of other path of your presentation, you talked also about these experiences of when life and education, everyday life coincides and everything is like inhabiting together these moments that seem very intense and rich. And it actually made me think of the global tools experience, and which was the very first, one of the very first guests, Sylvia, who talked about these moments when life and education coincides in this very short experience.
Yeah.
And I was quite curious about when you talked about rituals and this collective ritual, which question the way we live today and we inhabit very individually. How do they eventually continue or take other forms also after the moment of the workshop that I can imagine is like 1 week where everything is so very different and upside down, but then whether it would be even in the greenhouse, how this kind of took other forms in the student project, or maybe even in everyday life in participants, or if in your kind of daily rituals, like how does that kind of continues also in other forms beyond these very like intense moments?
Yeah, because in a way, like when you finish this intense week and you go back to your normal life, you feel like you just landed like from another planet. So it's really weird, and you also question like how long could it continue? Like how far can we go? Could we do this for 2 weeks, a month, like 3 years? Because on one hand, it's super exciting. It's also very energy demanding. Through time, dynamics change, like you change also. And for instance, with the greenhouse, this really speed up the bond within the group. And we carried on these weekly dinners in Mendrisio. So we would organize wandering from house to house every week, a dinner at a student house. And each time a different group was taking care of preparing the dinner and this thing. And they were always moments to, also to share, to reflect, but also just to be together and to spend time together. And maybe not so obviously, but eating together is somehow the easiest way to gather, but it's also quite tricky because it's an intimate moment at the same time. Like the moment you eat with someone, you're really entering like a private and intimate sphere that carries a lot of other things. Memory of like what are your personal daily rituals from your family, for instance. So I don't know, I have a friend that we recently became friends, and the first time we had dinner together, she was not eating. And then she was like going smoking, coming back, drinking less of water. And I was a bit like surprised, because for me, it's like, oh, now we sit, we spend like 3 hours, we eat, we drink, we talk. And then we talk about it. And And she said, you know, like we never used to really have dinner or meals together with my family. Everyone was just coming when they finished working and then leaving. And it was so obvious for me, and suddenly it questioned, you know, like how we create daily rituals for ourselves, from the family to the larger community, and how these moments are much more than just eating. There are moments where we share intimacy, where suddenly all the problems explode. At least for me, like dinners in family are always like the nicest and also the worst moment, because like when someone is stressed and comes home from work, dinner is suddenly becoming a battleground. And I mean, in my personal life, like I mean, we always have friends over for dinner. I mean, now that I have a daughter, a bit less because she's very demanding, and at 9, everyone should be silent. But we still try to. But yeah, we always invite friends over because it's a moment where you are taking care of others. People are there for you. You are relaxing, and you are sharing like whatever happens during the day in a neutral ground. And for instance, after this intense winter school in Bergamo, Silvia Gioberti, she's part of this collective, it's called Guerrilla Architect Space in Berlin. And every time we speak, she tells me, you know, when I cross this, my students in the corridors, because she brought some students from Berlin for this experience. Every time we cross eyes in the corridors, we're like, as if we knew what happened in the prison. You know, we shared these things together. And she says there is this spark in the eyes. I mean, I don't know if it's true, but this is what she says. But it kind of remains because it's something so simple that you can replicate every day in your life, you know, but you add something. Okay, we cook together. You know, you get more used to thinking not just about yourself, but about others. And even in the duration of the week, when we had the very first, this was also funny when it happens, but so this was one of the last dinner. Everyone is preparing, there is a child, someone is setting the table. But the beginning of this was this one. Of course, because everyone just arrived. So me and Yona, we were the one preparing the food. And we were like, okay, how many gnocchi do we need for 50 people, first of all? And it was a bit of panic. And then we forgot to boil some gnocchi, and then I couldn't have lunch, whatever. And at the very beginning, everyone was so worried to not eat. So at the beginning of the week, everyone was super worried about, am I going to have enough food? You know, and looking at others, you're already eating, let me run to the kitchen. And by the end, it completely changed. And through these rituals, you could really see like how this primitive society evolved from thinking about the individuality to making sure everyone has food, bringing like really creating rituals. So not just about having a fork and a dish, but experiencing the food collectively. So yeah, I mean, I can say that for sure. I have it embedded as also as Italian, okay, cultural matter, but it kind of stayed also in the rest of the group. And yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Is there one very last question, and then we would have to end? Gloire?
Yeah, so so my question is déjà thank you for the presentation. And so I understand that I understand that the alternative initiatives take place in like existing places, and this like it emphasizes the fact that it we want to show a different way of using a already existing place. So I was wondering if, no, I was wondering how important it is that the place that it is taking place already exists. I don't know, or if there's a way to build from zero an alternative place. It is okay.
Yeah, no, it's clear.
It's clear. Okay.
Yeah.
And also, what are the main characteristics of this kind of place?
The characteristics of the existing places reused or of newly built?
Newly built or both, if possible.
Yeah. Thank you. So yeah, I mean, I specifically showed you reuses for the simple reason that it's not really easier to reuse a building than to build a new one, but it's also it's because it becomes more about reclaiming a place that has like a symbolic meaning, political, social meaning, and so on. He mentioned third spaces before, and there are many examples of newly built buildings that are being built for the same purposes as we have been discussed so far, inside third spaces, in peripheral areas, in the countryside, and usually because they are self-built, they are rather small in scale, because you really have to imagine that you have to, I don't know, carry the material, hammer, drill it. So usually they are small scale, 1-2 store buildings. They have simple construction techniques because they are often built collectively, so maybe by a group of people that are not professional builders, but like everyday people that learn to build while building. But before I go into details, I mean, there is also literature about this project. My PhD thesis was about this, so I can also share if someone is, I mean, it's in English, but there are a lot of drawings. So for instance, my PhD thesis was about spatial practices that build architectures to empower communities. And I was focusing specifically on South Europe, but France is also full of examples, and also Germany. So I was looking at the way designers, practitioners, architects, however we want to call them, build this kind of little buildings. They look more like pavilions or like infrastructures or rooms, especially inside contested areas. So self-built settlements, abandoned lots, third spaces, peripheral lots, so these kind of places. And sometimes they take the shape of community kitchens. Like there is this really nice example in Lisbon. There is this community kitchen. Do you think I can access internet easily? I just show you these examples, so then if you want, I can send you more. French keyboard. So for instance, this one, it's a self-built settlement in Lisbon, on the other side of the river. It was self-built starting from the 70s in a farming area by immigrants, farm workers. And this group of architects that is called Atelier Mob, together with another collective of young architects that is called Colectivo Warehouse, they self-built this kitchen. and I mean, they did it because there was no running drinkable water in the settlement and no official electricity. So they dialogued, the architects started a dialogue with the municipality to say, hey, we need to bring drinkable water and running water to these people, saying if you cannot solve their housing issue, you at least need to give them services and facilities. So the construction of the kitchen was an excuse to bring water, at the same time to create a safe gathering space, especially for women and children, because the area is not like really, I mean, there is a lot of drug dealing and other things. And you see, I mean, it's a simple architecture. It has some, I could say, architectural details. It also won the Miss Van der Rohe award some years ago. But yeah, usually these architectures are mainly built in wood because it's easy, it's cheap, everyone can learn how to build in wood. But when you look at, okay, another example. Do you know, am I writing it again? Yeah, whatever, it's gonna find it, yes. Are you familiar with this project in Berlin? Some of you know it, maybe? So it's also self-built, and it's also was also initiated by the university in Berlin. So professors, students, all together, they built these structures floating on a former dump area near Tempelhof. And of course, like it's easy to use wood or prefab elements. Like these are the Baustelle, scaffolding. Scaffolding or other industrial material. And this is still, I mean, this project evolved quite a lot since 2018 when it was built. So they build, unbuilt, rebuilt, dismantled. But yeah, I think it's also, and they continue, if you are interested, actually, they organize a lot of workshops where you can just go for, again, a week and build with them and learn how to build this kind of projects. But then also, if you think about it, all informal neighborhoods, and in Europe, we actually have informal neighborhoods. In Madrid, in Lisbon, in Italy, we have a lot where people have to build their own houses because they don't find or they don't have access, not even to the public housing market. And then they build with anything. They build, when with Leopold in Mendrisio, we visited some of these neighborhoods in Lisbon, and people would build, come si chiamava? Lisbon. Where is the A? Ah. Sorry. I don't know why we have different. So for instance, this is a neighborhood in Lisbon that was entirely built by dwellers, by people living there, you know? And they built houses and bars and like a lot of places with their own hands. And in this case, with bricks and concretes. And so we can all learn how to build if we take the time to do it. And yes, we can also build these new places from scratch. The additional challenge is that then you need building permission, you know, all these things, if you want to build like a new building.
Thank you so much, Francesca.
Thank you.
It was super interesting, and we hope you could be there around more and even maybe next week. But because I'm gonna just present shortly next week, it will be the final lecture. It will not be a lecture actually of the cycle. It will be at the same time on Tuesday, but it will be above the auditorium. It will be with Noémie Zurbriggen and Antoine Evans. Maybe I don't pronounce the name correctly, but they are teachers and architects at the EPFL. And with their they had several different initiatives, including one called the Unlearning Center, and they questioned the format itself of the school atelier and the school itself. And so we're gonna do this last lecture of the last event of the cycle in a different format, and we will use also the small cards that you've written on. So you're all invited, and please talk around to other students of the school for the last event. And thank you so much again, Francesca.
Thank you so much for